Hello, I'm Dapper Dan Gavoston, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, including the annuals, which definitely count.
Oh ho ho, and I'm mischievous Marchinacchio, and I too own Let me start all over again. Oh ho ho, and I'm mischievous Marchinacchio, and I too own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man. But Dan, those annuals, they just don't count, and you continuing to insist otherwise, it's really bringing me down. I got to be honest.
Oh, well, I apologize, Mark. What about those giant-sized ones we're getting soon?
Oh, those giant size, they definitely count because I have them all, and you don't have all of them, right?
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, I think especially these ones that are upcoming. But that's for another day. Well, welcome to the Amazing Spider Talk, everybody. The show where two fans and collectors uncover the strange, fun, and fascinating history of the Spider-Man comic universe. Thanks for joining us for this review episode of the Amazing Spider Talk. Now, Mark, let's hear you butcher some names.
Oh, I love to butcher some names. I'm like the name butcherer. That's my superpower. So today on the show, Dan and I are going to be discussing Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 64, Legacy number 865, titled King's Ransom Part 2. Amazing Spider-Man number 64 was written by Nick Spencer, with art by Federico Vicentini, colors by Alex Sinclair, and letters by VC's Joe Caramagna, and a cover by Mark Bagley, John Dell, and Edgar Delgado. This issue was first released on April 21st, 2021. I think I did good on that one, Dan. What do you think?
You nailed it, Mark. You nailed it.
Nailed it.
All right.
Dan, let's just get right into this, right? I mean, let's talk about some comic here.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a little while for us, but I'm happy to be back here. So Amazing Spider-Man 64, that's 865, continues this King's Ransom story. For a title with King's Ransom, there is very little Kingpin actually in these comics. Although I feel like by the end of the story, he's going to be a much bigger player. But we do start off with him at the very least here. So Kingpin is using Baron Mordo to torture Kindred, which was kind of like a no-go for Osborn earlier in the scene. I mean Norman Osborn. Although if Kindred is Harry Osborn, it is a no-go for him too, I'd
Yeah, I'm
imagine.
sure. I'm sure he doesn't enjoy the torture, right? I mean,
Yeah, I
it's a
mean,
no go there.
it's interesting because we had Kindred saying like a few issues back, like when he was trapped, like this is exactly where I want to be, and it's like maybe he doesn't feel quite the same way undergoing this torture. He was not expecting Baron Mordo to come in, and we get some kind of weird narration from Kindred, and this is kind of a Spencerism, which is kind of starting a story off with narration captions where you don't really quite know who's talking. And
Right.
I do feel like there's maybe a little bit of an over reliance on you piecing together using the coloration of the narrative to understand who is talking and whose monologues you're getting. And even then, the writing is so maybe generic is the wrong term. It's just so vague. It's hard to really grasp what it's ever talking about. And I don't know if it's just like growing exhausted by this whole Kindred thing or whatnot. But reading this, I was just like, la 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 la. I don't really care.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, and this will become pertinent again at the very end of the book, but like I have now reached the point in this comic where when Kindred shows up or Kindred is connected to the plot somehow, it just kind of all grinds to a halt for me, and I don't care. I mean, he Kindred is Poochie now, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe he needs to go back to his home planet because I just don't care anymore. Like you blew your shot with Kindred earlier this year to get me to really be compelled here. It's just like I just feel like we're playing the same tune longer and longer and longer. This guitar solo doesn't end. I'm throwing every analogy I can out there, although I still like Poochie. I think that one's going to take off, Dan. But yeah, I mean, like, so he's getting tortured by Mordo, and like you said, this vague who's actually narrating the narrative here is not helping at all. Lines like, we all find ourselves in our own little hells. I mean, so like you said, is he in control? Is he not in control? Is this part of the plan? Like, it just, it's not clear. Nothing is being done to earn me wanting to know what to get to gain clarity here. This comic, throughout this arc specifically, is just so much better when we get away from Kindred. To me, the two most frustrating parts of the comic were the opening pages and the last few pages. So that's where we're at, and I don't know what else you want to say about this sequence. But I would love to talk about what comes afterwards, because I actually feel like there's some fun comic in there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I'll just say generally, and we can revisit this thought at the end, is my feeling about Kindred is, in this early scene, I still don't really understand what Kingpin is after. Is he after the Tablet of Life and Death? Is he after Kindred to restore Vanessa? I feel like there's multiple plans here, and this book hasn't done a good job of like threading the needle for me on like how those things are meant to come together. I mean, I know it's supposed to still be a mystery, but I'm still not even really sure like which MacGuffin I should be tracking most clearly. Like, maybe it's meant to be both, right? Like, he both sent criminals out after the tablet, and meanwhile he's working on Kindred, and those things are going to come together. But whenever we talk about one or the other, it's never really talking about it conjoined with other things. It's talking about it in like an absolute way. And so I'm like, is he approaching this from two different angles, hoping one of them will pay off? I just don't really understand it. And so that's really nebulous for me. And then, we'll talk later. I'll get into more detail that I think Kindred and his abilities and power set and status is still very nebulous to me. And when you're watching like a horror movie and you don't know the rules of the bad guy and they can just pull any kind of magic trick out of their book, it suddenly feels very unfair, and you're just not particularly interested in that. I mean, like, to me, that's the appeal of like Venom as a bad guy back when he was a simpler character. It's like, okay, we know sonics and fire can hurt him. Like, that's like, but he also doesn't, disrupt Spider-Man's spider sense. So it's like, it's like the rock, paper, scissors. And here I feel like it's like rock versus like 100 Swiss Army knives. And I just can't get on board with that. Like, I don't know how to address that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. And it's just been the flaw with this prolonged arc of many is, like you said, like there are no clear boundaries, no clear rules, stakes, because we just don't know what anyone is truly after here. Which, I mean, again, yeah, you want to have an element of mystery, but like at some point you have to tell people what the story is you want to tell. And I don't think Spencer is doing that. I don't think he wants to tell us what story he's telling. So, I mean, like, I guess if people want to keep trying to guess and keep up, that's on them. But I'm, whatever. I'm kind of not as into it anymore. But I like me some Robbie Robertson and Lonnie Lincoln teaming up. So why don't we talk about them for a little bit?
Yeah, well, as we move into the next part of this, I do think it is worth pointing out that the cover depicts none of this. Like, the cover is promising us like giant Gog and the Lifeline tablet and a fight between Spider-Man and Kingpin, and we get none of that here. And I understand that like these books the covers are often drawn months and months ahead of time, and they kind of plug stuff in and they hope it lines up, and maybe it doesn't, especially when you're doing a book like this. But with the publishing of all of these new giant-sized issues to conclude both this arc and the next arc, which is like the Chameleon Conspiracy. I don't know what it is. It's probably some double alliteration. I'm forgetting the title of it. And then you've got, this sinister war that was just solicited. I feel like this book seems weirdly on fast forward, or like that there's just some scramble going on behind the scenes. And, I don't want to blame one cover, but like the misaligning nature of this and the kind of Mark Bagley of it all, Not this is not an insult to Mark Bagley, but the guy is known for being quick, and whenever I see him kind of filling in gaps, it suggests to me schedules got shifted, and Mark Bagley's trying to like right the ship in some way. And a cover
Right.
like this suggests that to me, and I just really want to know what's going on behind the scenes in the Spider office at this time because it just seems so very irregular that we're getting like a weekly book for 2 months this summer with also giant sized issues and like three major event arcs in a row. I just that's so odd for this book, but maybe that's it. Maybe this is the future of what we should expect a Spider-Man title to be like.
Oof. Every month there's a dot something a point issue, right? I mean, is that what we're gonna get soon? Oh,
Well, I
uh,
mean, to that point, like the Sinister War is a separate side event that's
right.
going on alongside Amazing Spider-Man. We're getting like double shipping. You know, it's
Yeah.
like it's just exhausting, and I don't know. I don't want to judge any stories before I read it because that's really not the kind of like idea of our show. But I don't know, Ed. It's very unusual.
Gird your loins, Dan.
Hmm.
Uh, so with all that said, back to the plot here. We we come back to the scene of Peter's once again exploded apartment. What did we say last time? How many apartments has this have been blown up that
Yeah, well,
he's
at
lived
least
in?
there's no dead wino in this one.
Yeah, that's true. But we have Robbie and Tombstone there, and of course, like they're fresh off the awful discovery that their kids are in love with each other, and they're but like this is look, this is a kind of tired tradition in storytelling, but I'm here for it because I like both of these characters and I like how they interact with each other. But like the sworn enemies brought together for begrudgingly for a common cause, like I'm here for it for Robbie and Lonnie Lincoln here, right? I mean, so they're fighting each other till Spidey shows up, kind of like basically says, "Hey guys, let's your kids, right?" And that kind of like snaps them back into place, and like watching them kind of try and like break down characters like Mirage. I mean, like to me that was a true highlight for this issue.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that this was a fun dynamic, and we finally got an editor's note pointing us back to that great Jerry Conway story. Not that it's easily available anywhere, as that entire era of Spectacular Spider-Man is like weirdly hidden from view. And I don't mean just Jerry Conway. I mean also like JMD's stuff, which for some reason that must be a reason they're not printing in any form. Um, but yeah, I did think this was fun. There's probably an argument to be made that like Spider-Man, would have webbed up Tombstone and pursued on his own with Robbie on this quest. That like he wouldn't let a criminal off the hook, but I don't think that that's even really that all that worth entertaining more than me bringing it up here. But I do love some of the banter, like making fun of the crime master and who is it this time, which I think is something that we said on the last show.
Right.
Is like
Right.
how many different crime masters are there, and can you keep up? And I wonder if we're headed for a reveal here in any regard. But I also kind of just don't think so. I think it's just like there's a dude operating off of Staten Island that wants to expand his criminal empire. Um, you know, uh, in regards to Mirage, I don't know how you feel about this, but this felt like this book was like the most superior foes that we've gotten in this title in a bit. I mean, it does. This issue to me felt very like Spider-Man in the background and the antics of superior foesy characters kind of taking the forefront.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair assessment, but at the same token, like, I, I I'm not saying that I want Amazing Spider-Man to be taken over in terms of tone and narrative by Superior foes of Spider-Man, but like that book worked, and I feel like that whole sequence worked. It was funny, and like the whole approach with Robbie trying to kind of use his news hound instincts and leveraging like his connections, and Mirage being like, well, you're only two sources and what the other one is, it doesn't speak. um,
Yeah.
um and then it's and he's not getting anywhere, and then like Tombstone just comes in with the brute force, and I again, like, I legitimately laughed, and it was very Superior Foes, but Superior Foes was a really good comic, so like bringing in those elements for scenes like this, it works. It kind of, to me, like, I wouldn't be as big of a fan of it if it didn't fit into the flow of the story. But I feel like, this was a good instance for Spider-Man to kind of fade into the background a little bit and let Robbie and Lonnie work this out. And to your earlier point, I would think, here's my no prizing it. I think that Spider-Man let Tombstone go because he realized that Tombstone's daughter is involved too. So he probably is trusting his paternal instincts that he's going to do the right thing through here, and then probably once everyone's back safe and sound, he would web up Tombstone. So there's my no prize. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking too. Hey, let me ask you, before we move on from this story, we get this kind of flashback as to like how they escaped the explosion at the end of the previous issue. But it's, sandwiched in between these scenes with Robbie and Lonnie, as like a Peter, who shows up later as Spider-Man, it reveals his knowledge about like how they all got away, and he knocked out, Fred, and transforms into his new costume, but then is like beaten up by Madame Mask, and can't stop her before she and Crime Master run off with Randy and Janice. I felt like kind of weird about that, in that the final issue shows like all of them being confronted by Crime Master and Madame Mask, and then it blows up. But now we're being told that there was like missing time there between those panels, that where a bunch of other stuff happened.
Yeah.
I don't know if I feel cheated, because like the end of these comics are mostly cheats. Like it's like everybody died. Oh wait, never mind.
Yeah, right.
But like it is
tuned,
weird
2
to
weeks.
mess with time like that. I mean, did you feel cheated at all, or like that the structure of this was weird?
Yeah, I mean, I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, I don't know if cheated is the word, but like, I mean, they're definitely like bending the rules here of the narrative. I mean, like, yes, yeah, no one is actually expecting everyone inside the building to be dead, despite how the last issue ended. But like, I mean, like they really kind of locomoted Peter Boomerang into the scene here in a way where we may not kind of define physics and time and space here. So it's a cheat. I don't know if I feel cheated by the cheat, but like it's just kind of like, like comics, whatever. They're trying to get a story and get a funny scene in of Spidey kind of punching out Boomerang or Peter, so he could change into his costume. I guess I don't know. It's not. I'm not ready to like hang up my fan club over it, but it's kind of lame, I guess.
That would be the pettiest way to end your fandom
Right.
of Spider-Man. Is over. How dare
That's
you
it.
mess with a timeline like that?
I'm coming to cancel Spider-Man Day.
Yeah. Okay.
Over this.
So we go to a scene where Randy and Janice are tied up by Madame Mask and Crime Master, who reveal that they don't actually really care about the tablets or the quest that they were put on. They're trying to use the kind of chaos of the kidnapping of them to then kill Tombstone and Robbie when they come to retrieve them, and then kind of step in, both seizing Lonnie's territory as Tombstone, and it sounds like installing their own person into the new spot at the head of the Bugle. I don't really know how that works, but okay. They don't have to be the most intelligent of criminals.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty half-baked scheme, I gotta say. I mean, I mean, the only thing that kind of worked for me was the idea of, well, there'll be chaos on the streets from Tombstone's death, and that's true. But like, yeah, the not everything is a fully formed plan here.
Yeah, and meanwhile Janice is trying to like work Madame Mask with her whole like syndicate thing, like the all female team. Like why did she go with Crime Master instead of doing a female team up? And that felt appropriate given that character's kind of criminal history as like girl power villainous. So that was nice. I mean, this issue is very light. I don't really feel that much of a threat from these characters, which I think maybe gets to the whole superior foesness of it, which is like that's the kind of book where like if an anvil fell out of the sky on one of your characters, you might think they'd be okay.
Right.
So like I can't really get too worked up by the drama here, but I don't know that I'm really meant to.
Right. Right. Um, and that kind of brings us to Fred's note to Peter, which I got to admit, I laughed at this. I mean, it's so over the top and ridiculous, but like, obviously it's meant to be. But it's Fred had a premonition of where the final tablet piece is. And like he can't he's kind of putting on his best Spider-Man speech here. He can't keep risking it to all these people, Aunt May and Randy, and most of all, sweet innocent Peter. I laughed at that one, I gotta tell you. And then he's gonna go at it alone. And yeah, I mean, are we about to say goodbye forever to Fred Meyer's Boomerang, Dan? What do you think?
Well, it's funny that you said it. He puts on his best Spider-Man here because he's getting kind of a Spider-Man arc.
Yeah.
This story. I mean, I think we've said that, Peter has not really had very many arcs throughout a lot of these stories. And this one, Peter, again, I feel like he kind of feels like a bit of a background character in it. Like I can't really tell you what his investment in all of this is. But to get that big final moment from Fred, it feels like, like the end with him with his arm off, blasting up. It feels like exactly like a panel you get of Peter swinging off into the city with all these faces of guilt or all the villains that he's about to fight. And it's like, oh, great. So we're going to see Boomerang like go into a Spider-Man situation. And yeah, there is like a sort of foreboding about that, right? Because
Yeah.
the B-list characters that do that kind of thing, typically things don't work out well for them. But like an image like that to me suggests that like the conclusion to this King's Ransom story, whether it's the conclusion to Boomerang as a person in general, I do think that this seems to be setting up the story to be the conclusion of the superior foe's redemption saga, right? Like if he was a true jerk there, he's been slowly becoming more heroic by the end of this. And I'm ready to believe it, but I'm also ready to believe that like master planner Boomerang is being noble, but there's a whole backdoor that's ready to be explored here, where we pull the big heist on everybody at the end of this. I mean, I don't believe that Fred Meyer's character is ever truly noble.
Yeah, I mean that would probably be on brand for him for that as kind of the ultimate swerve here. But in the meantime, I mean, this is like you said, there's a little bit of a foreboding feeling to it. Dare I say, some stakes involved. Like you're kind of rooting for Boomerang here to do the right thing, to kind of have his hero moment. But so we'll see what happens. But the comic doesn't end there, though, Dan. There's more.
And
Because
this is where I think we're going to get into, like you've been expressing to me that you're upset at the kindredness of it all. And to me, this scene is just kind of like, I have no idea what to make of it. And not, I don't know that I like hated the scene. I'm just kind of like, wait, we're going here? Like, why are we going here?
Right. Well, I mean, just to back it up, I mean, for any of our listeners here who are not following comic book news, I mean, they announced for this summer um, that there's going to be a new arc, Sinister War, and it's going to involve the Sinister Six. It appears, or that Sinister Six and then some, and also it's going to have Otto Octavius back in a Spider-Man book. I mean, it was what the end of the Christos Gage Superior run, right, where he kind of flipped back into Otto's body in another deal with, was it with Mephisto? I'm trying to remember
It
the
was, yeah.
parameters of his deal. Yeah, because he was taking on like what, an alternative Norman Osborn, I think, or something like that. It's
Correct,
like,
yeah.
yeah. That seems so long ago. It probably wasn't. I don't even know. Anyway, so yeah, so obviously, the Sinister Six and Otto's return to the book. I mean, like that's an event in its own right for sure. But what kind of killed me with this teaser, Dan, is well, first of all, we're revisiting some familiar artwork inside the cemetery, and you texted me about this saying like, well, Mark, you pointed this out the first time we saw this, and I was like, yeah, but this is one of those times I kind of wished I was wrong. Which was that, do we remember which issue it was? Was it the first issue of Last Remains, or
It was something like that, and I mean, it was definitely an oddly drawn issue,
okay,
but I'm not exactly sure which one it was. But it's
but
framed. The page is framed exactly the same way this page is framed,
yeah, the
except
pages.
Otto's replaced with Kindred.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like we are under the belief that what we are seeing the first time around, not in this issue, what the first time around is what we're seeing is Kindred kind of ripping his way through a cemetery, going through a coffin. You even see what appears to be one of his centipede arms ripping something up. But at the time, I said, also kind of looks like Doc Ock's arms, right? And that's what we're seeing here now. It's actually Otto ripping through the cemetery. He's trying to regain his memories because he's got gaps from the deal that he struck with Mephisto, and to kind of add the cherry on top of all this, he gets to one of the coffins. It's empty, so this kind of plays into the empty coffin of Carly Cooper. I'm assuming is getting brought into this. Not Carly's coffin. I'm saying the ones that she pointed out were empty, right? But then on top of that was we have a little kindred centipede crawling out of Otto's ear. So like, and it's whispering things to him, and it's like basically it's we're as I said at the beginning of the episode here, Dan, we're going back to Kindred. Kindred is being linked to every single important thing in this run, and I just don't know why. Like we have to just make everything about Kindred. Like like to me it just doesn't work anymore. Again, I hate to repeat myself, but as I said earlier, you had your shot to make me care about Kindred, and you missed completely. You missed your shot. Like trying to now bring in classic characters, Otto. I'm assuming others in the Sinister Six are going to somehow be getting manipulated by Kindred. Like it's you're just wasting your time. I don't care. Like this is just adding hype to something that you frankly hyped up and then flopped on. So what could you possibly do to redeem this character at this point in a way where all of a sudden I'm really gonna like buy into the importance and stakes of this character?
I feel similarly, but with a little bit of a difference because, like, thinking back on post Last Remains, I enjoyed that one issue where it was like Peter, talking to MJ, and we saw Kindred, and the one where Peter goes to confront Liz, and they find the goblin stuff in Harry's closet. Like, those were additional wrinkles to the Kindred mystery that I was really interested in because they seemed related to the information that we already had. This to me feels like a continued expansion on that into a whole other realm that I'm like, I don't know that I want to see this story expanded again. I just want to see a conclusion to this story. And, maybe it was there all along in that image that we saw. I don't know what the implication of this mirrored page is. Does it mean that the kindred we saw tearing up graves before was actually kindred tearing up graves, and this is Otto doing something similarly? Does it mean that when we saw that image before, it was like a dream of Peter's, but it was actually Otto in real life doing that? I'm not really sure what it means. I will say, I think I had a different interpretation of the very end of it. Is I don't think that kindred is in Otto's head yet. He gets in it at the end of the issue. I think it's the centipede crawling into his ear.
Okay.
And so, then that leads me to wonder what brought Otto to that grave. And it says he says out loud that he was guided there by gaps in his memory, the gaps would be like Superior Spider-Man. So is he going to his own grave? And Kindred knew that he would be looking there and set a trap for him. That would be very curious to me. Is it the grave of Harry Osborn with the fake body that was described by Mysterio back when we learned about, the first time we learned about Harry Osborn going to Europe and faking his death? I don't know what would draw Otto to Harry Osborn's grave. I don't really know that those characters have much in common with each other, except for maybe their connection to the Stacys in some way, in that Otto killed Captain Stacy and Harry is good friends with Gwen, which seems to be fueling some aspect of the kindred thing. But that's such a reach, I could try to bring in the Lookouts, but I think it's such an enormous reach in that regard. So I don't know, really how to interpret this, which I think is Spencer's MO, but it leaves me kind of a little at a remove, because like I said, I'm not eager to see this continue expanding.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, yeah, I'm not eager to see it either. I like I said, for me, it's just, yeah, this insistence. I mean, since the very first issue of this run, we introduced this character, and we are getting the sense that this character is just pulling all these strings, but to the point you were making earlier, we still don't know what the rules are. We still don't know what the extent of his powers are. I mean, it's not even about, okay, yeah, I've given up on the idea of it's not the who, but we still don't know enough what, or how,
Yeah.
or why, or anything, it's been 64 issues, and we're still kind of barely into this story. And maybe per your other speculation, this is starting to reach some kind of conclusion soon. And I just don't see how, if that's the case, how any of this can reach any kind of satisfying way, where things feel fleshed out and well explained and well documented and well justified. To me, it just feels like, it's like going back into the 90s and being like, we're kind of sputtering along on this story. Let's throw Venom and Carnage in it. That's what Kindred feels like to me right now. I feel like it's just
or even Superior, right? Where it was like, okay, well, this thing is going well, so let's throw Venom into it, And I think that's where you saw Superior really sputter, is these, Venom showed up, the Goblin showed up. I mean, and those are the stories that I think the least of from that era.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, well, right, but it's just, like I said, it's just this lack of trust of being able to tell a story without an attraction, I guess. I don't know, but is Kindred even an attraction at this point? I don't, Kindred is only an attraction because people say he's an attraction, but he's not. What has he done that makes me care about whether or not this character showed up? I mean, heck, at least Venom and Carnage when they showed up in their heyday, would beat the crap out of Spidey and really pose a threat. Like, I mean, even everything that happened between Kindred and Spider-Man, like we don't even know what was real or not. Like it just kind of felt like a dream state for the most part. So I don't know.
I want all these writers to go back and read the Menace storylines from Brand New Day. Like,
Yeah.
that's how you do one of these mysteries. Like, that might be one of the truly only satisfying reveals in these books because it made sense. It was short.
Right.
We got to it eventually. It was connected to our characters in some way. It was connected to the larger world in a way that was meaningful to everybody. I know people like to rag on Brand New Day, but like that to me is so endlessly more satisfying than any of the stuff that we're getting right now in terms of mystery elements. And maybe it's just that Spider-Man has really moved too far into these mystical realms and it's gotten too weird and I just appreciated the more grounded approach of the Menace thing, even if it was like a reboot, like another Goblin in the Osborn family.
Right.
But anyway, we haven't talked much about the art here. We've praised Vicentini as kind of a new, creator here. Something of a like bit of a cross between like an Otley and like a Ramos, if you will. What do you think of his work in this issue?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a step back, but I don't feel it was as strong as some of his other issues. I mean, like overall, I mean, you mentioned the cover as well. And I know that's not Vicentini, that's Bagley, but like I felt in general the art of this book from cover to cover felt kind of rushed and a little sloppy and not as clear. I mean, a lot of the action here, especially like within the scenes with Madame Mask and Crime Master and Randy and Janice kind of all like in close corners. I had a hard time following the action cleanly. Ditto for when Peter is kind of recapping the scene that we were talking about before, the cheat that I'm not cheated by. Like, there's some things kind of lack some visual clarity to me, and I just feel like there was some sloppiness to them, and which was kind of unlike Vicentini's earlier work on this book.
Yeah, I know exactly the moment that you're referencing where Peter gets like blasted by Madame Mask. There's just like so much going on in that page. I was like, I just couldn't piece together who was moving where. And I think also being kind of unmoored in time and putting together how that fit into the narrative of the previous issue really, really threw me off. I felt like his line work was a little bit thinner here and there's less rendering than we had seen before. Like I think about the cleanliness of the MJ reveal that he did back during Last Remains versus the kind of like really busy, like kind of like quick pencil work here. I still think his stuff is fun and expressive looking, but like then there's like pages where like Spider-Man's eyes are like on his chin, and it's just like what is going on physically with Spider-Man's head in that image. So to me it felt a bit rushed, and speaking of like how the costume is rendered, there's still some cool effects being done with it, but like what happened to the story with this costume? I was really looking forward to that, and right now it feels like a super afterthought, and like I'm very anxious that like we're gonna get to the end of the story, and then like a key moment, the costume's gonna have a little micro beat, and we'll just have been stringing it along this whole time just so we can execute on a story instead of having it be organically weaved throughout.
Right.
We feel like we introduce something and like, okay, no more costume fun. And I found that a little bit disappointing.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. And I think even like was either in the intro page or like in one of the earlier recaps of the story, like it felt like they were setting up the costume to play a part, and then like you said, yeah, the costume is just a complete non-factor of this entire comic. So you want to get into some grades on this?
Yeah, sure. So I'm still kind of feeling my grade out actually. What are you thinking, Mark?
I, I'm gonna give it a B minus. I think I was probably I think B last time. I mean, I think this was a little less compelling than the last time out, but like, again, I do like the scenes with um Lonnie and Robbie, and the Mirage thing made me was a highlight for me. The Fred note at the end. I mean, but obviously there were some other things going on here that kind of knocked it down a notch or two for me. So
I'm gonna give this one a C plus just because it doesn't really feel like a very meaty entry in this story. Like I said, I enjoy all those things, but it felt a lot of kind of like either like table setting or like slight increments forward. And, I just, and I also felt like there was a real lack of Peter and his voice in this one. And that always is something that I consider when I'm giving a grade. So C plus for me, but like I enjoy it more than maybe that grade sounds like. But yeah, anyway, now I'm like really hedging.
No. Stick with it, Dan. Stick to your
Okay.
guns. Stick to your guns. All right. Well, it is that time for all good things to come to an end. So we want to say thank you to you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning in to this episode of The Amazing Spider Talk.
Yeah, this episode was edited by Rick Coates with production support from Andy Myers. Our artwork comes handcrafted by artists Ron Friends, Sal Buscema, and Ray Sumser. Our theme songs were produced by Rylan Bojack, Tony Thaxton, and Spider Madge. This episode, like all of our episodes, was originally released on Patreon as a live stream hangout with us back when the comic was first released. So, if you'd like to help us support our show's continued existence and these reviews while joining us on the live stream, why not head on over to our Patreon and sign up? So, Mark, until you start pulling centipedes out of your ears, what's our motto?
At least you said my ears. I thought at first that it was going to be pulling them out of somewhere else. That motto, of course, is with great podcasts, there must also come the amazing Spider Talk.
Two men who know the angles, uncover and untangle all the questions and the webs left out to tangle. Be in 1962, last Wednesday's afternoon. They'll bend your ears with reckless self-abandon. The amazing